Now, after coming out of episode 5 of Angels of Death, I think I understand what it takes to make a great Angels of Death episode for myself, and there's two main factors, because this week's episode is actually my favorite of the 5. I'm sure there's going to be someone who played the game or read the manga who says, this episode isn't that great because they cut out something here or there, but as someone who knows nothing about the original source material, I really like this episode, and it was for two main reasons. The first of which is a pretty obvious one. The escape rooms that they have to get out of, they have to be visually interesting, but also creatively interesting, which this week they were out of the 3 that we have. But also, if you put your characters, either Rachel or Zach, through emotional trauma through that escape room, you probably have sold me on the episode. And this week, Zach goes through some emotional trauma. I mean, it's not surprising that he had a messed up past. Generally, someone wouldn't be that sick and twisted for no reason. They would have to have some trigger in their past to make them be so violent and murderous just towards normal people. It doesn't excuse his actions, but at least we're starting to understand where it's coming from, and I'm sure we're going to learn more as the episodes go on. The first room is the one that we carry off of from last week, and it's the least interesting out of the 3, but I do like how it functioned. I like the idea of how the gas is still seeping in. Something I really enjoy is how they detailed the poisonous gas, something that I actually think anime has a hard time sometimes selling the atmosphere that the characters are in. Sometimes if you have something like poisonous gas or fire, it doesn't really get the feeling that the characters are experiencing. Like, when you see the poisonous gas, you look at it and you're like, shit, I would not want to breathe that in. That looks just painful to even be in the same room. So I like that. They don't overblow it, but they also just don't undersell the feeling and just the torture that breathing that air must feel. And I also like the overall comedy with Kathy just laughing in the background and Zach just getting more and more pissed off, like how he breaks the keycard. There was some nice comedy in that first room, and by the time they get out after the explosion, it was pretty awesome. The second room is really what sold me on this episode overall, and really sold the episode as being my favorite of the 5. Having Zach have to relive his past through this dollhouse was absolutely phenomenal. I actually love just how sick and twisted Kathy is as a character. Like, she literally is as twisted as they come. Just having him have to relive such a horrible experience as basically Rachel has to figure out which thing to move in which order, but of course Zach already knew the order because he lived it, but he wouldn't say anything because he didn't want to do this in the first place. I like how it slowly builds up, because something I really like is I have seen some people say that Zach's voice actor goes too overboard a lot, he screams a bit too much, and I do agree in certain situations, but this scene in particular, he sold the performance. The way his slow but steady, kind of pissed off persona eats away at him as he's moving the dolls around, and how his voice actor subtly builds into the more angrier and angrier tone, it was so great and really sold the performance, and how they end up in the last room there where one of them has to take a needle, or they have to take both of them to figure out which one's the poison, which one is pretty much nothing's bad about it, it's just gonna be vitamins or something like that. And how Zach ends up taking both of them, I really like just the overall build-up, because the first room with the poisonous gas, ending off of last week, it was good, it was interesting, it even had some funny moments. But having the emotional trauma with the second and also third room, especially with how Zach almost kills Rachel near the end, and how both of them, everything really feels understandable with their relationship, where Zach is just a tool, that's who he's been all his life, whereas Rachel is a doll. And it kind of feels like the perfect relationship in this very messed up scenario, and I love how it slowly builds up throughout the episode. And how, yes, you can look at some of the things that Rachel says, like, well, why wouldn't Rachel just be fine with taking both and dying there because she wants to die, but she's this weird doll with this obsession over God. We don't know exactly why, but we also don't know everything about Zach as well. Both of them, they need one another, they made a promise, both of them hate liars. How is everything going to build up as the show goes on, especially since there is going to be like 16 episodes to this anime? And I think that's really good. Like, this anime still is no masterpiece to me, I'm just having a fun time with it, but if they can doing things like this, having more and more interesting escape rooms, having more interesting kind of villains that they're going to have to deal with, but also adding in that emotional trauma every so often, every few weeks, every other week, this is going to be a very enjoyable ride for the entire watch. I loved how it looked, I loved how it felt, the directing was on point. Even the voice acting I thought was really solid, especially from Zach, who Zach's just been a fun voice actor for me, he didn't really blow me away, but this episode he absolutely did, and I can't wait to see how Kathy's kind of arc is going to end, if it'll end next week or the week after, but nonetheless, she's easily my favorite character in the show right now because of how twisted and messed up she is, but also how creative her kind of escape rooms are. I really like this, I just really like the idea of the tool and the doll, just kind of working together and where they're gonna go. But overall, this was an incredibly fun episode. I loved how things looked and felt, and just the emotional torture that they were putting Zach through. It's so twisted and messed up, and I absolutely loved everything about it. But let me know what you thought of this episode down in the comment section below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Your favorite moment? Let me know what you're feeling, and before you leave, be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and also be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.